I was recently alerted by a YouTube viewer of user shockofgod, a self-proclaimed post-atheism Christian, who recently posted a video entitled "Atheism on the Decline, Studies Show." Just a quick note, there should be a comma in there somewhere. Regarding a recent article in the Washington Post, Washington Times, my mistake, that reports that the global population of atheists is declining. Now, to begin with, I'd like to go on the neutral record, stating I did not expect so soon to be fulfilling my operation as a mediator of debate and discussion, and certainly not with such a case as deplorable as this. Review for a moment my top 5 tips for debating theology. They are, in summary: 1. Do not stretch definitions beyond their literal meaning. 2. Do not assault the faith for the actions of the faithful. 3. Do not correlate where you cannot demonstrate. 4. Do not simply indicate evidence presented. And 5. Do not support your theory with one piece of evidence only. I also added the bonus 6th tip, which was not to insult your opposition. That is touched upon by shockofgod in this video, with gloating at the end of the video, but is overall to this mediation irrelevant, perhaps thankfully. Now, I have to be fair to shockofgod. The argument he presents is not itself flawed, according to these 5 tips. It is actually the evidence he uses that creates the problem here. So let's take that Washington Times article. I've duplicated the link he provided to it below, and compare it against our 5 tips. Tip number 1 states to take definitions at their literal meaning, and immediately we see a problem here. In the quotation, "Atheism's future seems increasingly to lie in the private beliefs of individuals rather than the great public domain it once regarded as its habitat," Mr. McGrath wrote in the US magazine Christianity Today. Immediately, the article refers to atheism as extant as a singular unanimous group, and as I have already detailed in my previous video, The Meaning of Atheism, this is not the case. Atheism, in fact, already exists as an individual status, and not anything approaching the homogeny it is being credited with here. Atheism does have its loud proponents, just as any theological position does, but those proponents are not representative of the greater atheist population, and they never have been. Tip number 2 then states to not hold the belief responsible for the actions of the believers, due to a number of ethical, rational, and moral grounds. Once again, the article falters here with the quotation, "With time, atheism turned out to have just as many frauds, psychopaths, and careerists as religion does. With Stalin and Madeleine Murray O'Hair, atheism seems to have ended up mimicking the vices of the Spanish Inquisition and the worst televangelists, respectively," Mr. McGrath wrote in Christianity Today. Just as a note, Christianity Today is not a particularly neutral source on this subject, but we are glazing over that briefly for the time being. I'd also like to quickly point out a small editing blasphemy that is here, in that the article does cite Mr. McGrath as the contributor of the quotation, but in fact the first mention of atheism is an editing contraction, which could very easily be replaced with anything, such as, "With time, Bob Dole turned out to have just as many frauds as psychopaths and careerists as religion does." That's not a big thing, it's just an editing blasphemy. Now, I don't believe I need to further detail the violation presented here, but in simple terms, it is dragging out a bloody history when humanity as a whole has little but bloody history. It serves no real purpose other than to attempt to demonize the opposition, and has no real place in a rational debate. Tip number 3 states to never draw correlation where you cannot demonstrate causation. That is to say, never claim a causation without evidence to support it beyond the correlation. The article claims atheism is in decline globally, but it never provides figures to support this claim, and instead it actually veers from the main point by mentioning a litany of studies showing a correlation between spiritual resources and improvement of health. Here then we see another violation. It presents as a correlation what it fails to demonstrate, thus relegating it to merely a correlation, not an actual link between the two with basis in evidence and fact. As such, the correlation may simply be coincidental rather than actual relation. This is important because it means that there is actual basis rather than simple conjecture. It also makes this mistake when associating atheism irrevocably with science. As I noted in my earlier videos, the two are not synonyms. Tip number 4 states to present your evidence rather than to indicate it. I can't really fault the article for not describing the 1,200 studies of medicinal faith, but the main title refers to a study of atheist population that is never presented. Instead, 1 or 2 names are presented as having moved away from atheism, though it notes that one of them was humanist rather than atheist, in which there is a definite, if subtle, separation, I should note. Lastly, tip number 5 states to use more than one piece of evidence to support your argument. And thankfully, this is not the fault of the author, but of Shock of God himself. He does make use of 2 sources, but as simple examination shows, they are actually the same article. Thus, by debunking that one article in this mediation, I have erased all of his evidence, and thus his argument falls flat. Now, I look forward to seeing more improved videos from Shock of God, and rest assured I am not simply a mouthpiece of the atheist community. Any responses to him and others among his community will be met with equally unbiased mediation. I am MrStarmatter, and this has been the mediation of Shock of God's video, Atheism on the Decline Show.